Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a lineup of just horrifying experiences. I also have a very debated and historical Dogman video. One that dates back a little ways that has been debated for a long period of time. I want to talk about it and look at it with y'all. Before we get into it, though, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It does not cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads that I put out daily, click that bell icon. And folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's upload, shall we? All right, so the video clip that I'm going to share a little bit later is originated from Michigan. And I figure since we are going to talk about this video clip, we might as well throw in a Michigan Dogman experience to start the day off with. So, here goes. Summers in northern Michigan, Cadillac, Michigan, can be long, drawn-out days of sweltering humidity. Midsummer daylight can last till almost 11 p.m. I was around 10 to 12 years old with an older brother and sister. My dad owned his own construction business and kept late hours. We lived out in the country, and our house sat on around 20 acres of woodland. Pine Tree Grove to our north, hardwood and pine mix to the south, west, and east. There was a small creek that ran through our backyard that would lead back to a beaver dam. About 3 miles or so up the road from us was an old landfill. Now, like I had mentioned, my dad owned his own business and worked late hours. Often he would come home at around 9-10 p.m., and after being out in the heat all day, he would find more comfort in his full-size dually Ford with air condition and some cold beer. So he would come home, often pick my mom up, and they would just go cruising the endless country dirt road, enjoying a beer and catching up on the day's events. Quite often they would drive down that road that led to the old landfill, which was basically a dead end. They would park on the side of the road very close to the ditch. My dad used to do that to freak my mom out. The country roads in northern Michigan grew very thick brush that extended through the ditch right up to the very edge of the road. My dad used to tease my mom by saying a bear is going to press its nose against the window and roar. They have done this cruising thing for years and generally only saw the occasional raccoon or deer. Our parents came into the house somewhat rushed. My mom led and Dad followed, trying to explain something. I asked what happened. My dad explained the fouling. We were parked down the road, going to Smiley's. As we sat there, your mother said she could hear something moving around in the brush. It was around 11 p.m., so it was dark by now. My dad apparently tried to ease my mom by saying if it was a bear, it would have eaten her by now. The night ended. A few days later, my parents again went there, hanging out, and parked in the same spot. It got dark, and again, my mom was the first to hear something in the woods on her side of the truck. This time, they both heard something. This time, it was much larger. Large sticks were being broken and snapped this time. My dad figured that it must be a deer or a black bear. They turned on the radio and sat and listened. My mom said she could hear something breathing out there. My dad soon, too, heard the same thing. It was getting closer, and they felt it brush against the side of the truck that was near the ditch. It caused the truck to sway. My mom screamed and insisted they get the hell out of there. Again, they came home and told of the experience. My dad figured that it must have been one big bear, so he sped off, looking in his rear view. The large black object was bounding across the road, sort of going from two-legged to a four-legged run, disappearing into the darkness of the brush. I remember just being amazed by this experience. You see, my dad is a simple man. Life then was cut and dry, black and white. Everything can be explained. But there was something different in his eyes that told me he was not convinced, nor when he glanced at my mom, and she would return this look of fear that I will never forget. After work, cruising had stopped now. My mom refused to go. My dad would come home and sit at the table in our dining room with the lights off and discuss the day in the dark with my mom. Living in the country in Michigan with no air conditioning meant that at night every window in the house was open. Things had been quiet for a few days. It was around 11:30 p.m., and us kids were already in bed. I shared a room with my older brother, and my sister was next door. I must have just drifted off when it happened. The most terrifying howl/scream I had ever heard. It was so loud. It was as if it was right next to the house. I can still hear that sound in my head as if it happened just the other day. Growing up in the country in North Michigan and being outdoors all day until dark, you hear it all. My dad was a hunter and knew all of the native animal sounds, but what we heard that night, none of us, not even my dad, could say what the hell it was. Upon hearing that screechy howl, and near tin itself, I heard my dad jump up and slam the dining room chair into the wall, exclaiming to my mom, "Get my 12 gauge. My brother and I are now in the dining room, along with my sister, who heard that screech. My dad's composure was now different. It was fight or flight, and he was getting a loaded gun. This was more than a bear. We have had bear in our backyard before, and my dad would just use a flashlight and yell at them until they usually moved on. This night was much different. My dad had told my mom to shut the sliding glass door after he walked out into the backyard. I remember looking out that back door from a safe distance as my dad disappeared into the darkness with his gun and a flashlight. We had just one light on the back of our house near the door, which did not offer light beyond 20 feet or so. My dad was now walking straight into the backyard towards a small storage shed. Our backyard was cleared and mowed, about 8 acres back to the river and 10 acres wide from the north to the south. It was like we just cut our own chunk of land and stuck a house right in the middle. Being surrounded by pine and hardwood was usually an advantage to Michigan folks in the wintertime because it was a natural snow fence. However, this night there was only one advantage, and it was not in my dad's favor. He walked with his gun, shouting nervously as I remember, hoping to run off whatever the hell was out there. I was still standing in the dining room, which led directly into the living room, where we had a large window which showed out to our front yard. There was the moonlight and the sky was clear. I remember looking out the front room window and seeing a large dark object run across our driveway, alternating from back legs to all four, similar to how you may see a gorilla run. My brother saw it as well and yelled out to my dad through the kitchen window, "It's out front and it's heading to the side of the yard to your right." My dad stood out there frozen, listening. It got real quiet. We heard nothing from inside the house. We had our dog inside that never made a sound. I remember thinking Rex is dead. This dog barked at everything except tonight. He barked once upon the initial screech, then fell silent. My dad came rushing back into the house after what seemed like an eternity. He told my mom to shut and lock all the windows and doors. He then said something to this day that gives me the chills. I don't know what the hell is out there, but whatever it was, felt like it was hunting me. He then explained that once it ran into the pines to the north, that it was staying just inside of the tree line, keeping cover. As he walked, it moved. He heard branches breaking, sticks cracking loudly from its weight. He would occasionally catch glimpses of something dark, and then see a branch wiggle. The creature kept moving. At one point, as my dad stood still, he could hear it continue to move west, then south, then east on the other side of him. That was when he came back in and decided to lock the house down. Whatever it was, he felt it clearly had the upper hand regardless of a gun and flashlight. My dad sat up for the rest of the night in that kitchen with that shotgun right on his lap. It was probably an hour later or so that I was again awakened by that hideous scream of a rabbit being captured. Anyone who has ever heard a rabbit cry will understand this one. My dad stated that son of a gun is after the rabbits. The dog in the backyard never once barked again. The next morning, my brother and I went to have a look around. My dog Rex, he was all right, but he stayed cowered in the back of his house. He had to be coaxed out. We wandered out behind the shed and saw something that just blew our minds. Our shed simply sat on the ground with a no cement foundation. Rabbits had burrowed tunnels under it, and we had a population of around 50 or so rabbit that just ran free in the yard. But when we walked out to the back of that shed, there was a huge pile of sand and a tunnel that I could have surely fit into. There were huge claw marks where it had been digging. We could make out impressions of what appeared to be maybe a rear end and two heel-like prints out in front. It reminded me of how you may see a child sitting in a sandbox digging a hole with the feet planted in the front of them, and the hands would drag back sand and push it to the either side. There was rabbit hair everywhere. A few rabbits that survived thumped their feet and ran off into the brush, obviously still nervous from what had taken place earlier. We told my dad when we saw him again, and he just had this look on his face that was less than convincing when he said, "It must have been coyotes or something." I guess we knew to ourselves what he really meant. None of us really knew. But in times like this, and at the age, an answer is an answer. I was able to find some reassurance, but have always known that there was more to it. I don't ever remember hearing the creature again, but there would be times when I felt like something was watching me from the tree line. We never really spoke much about it after that night. Even to this day, my dad still has that unassured look when he tries to give an explanation. My mom sticks to the Dogman story like me. I find the woods of northern Michigan to be a place of enchantment and great mystery. There is something out there. The Native American tribes of Michigan knew it. Now I do as well. All right, so something that really popped into my head with this experience was when the mom and dad were initially made contact with this creature while they were parked on the dirt road. It had brushed against the dad's truck, which we are talking a Super Duty dually, which is a pretty heavy vehicle. And for this thing to rock that truck would show an amazing amount of strength. And as well as it was quiet in a way that if it was that strong and that big, and they only heard bits and pieces of twigs breaking, or possibly only when it wanted to be heard. I really think that these creatures will play on that fear. There's a couple of comments that caught me yesterday. One was, as an apex predator, why do these creatures announce themselves with the howl? And I did comment back. I said, they are apex predators. But they normally don't hunt humans for food. They usually, from what I know or what I've heard, hunt animals for their prey, and they hunt humans for fun. Just more or less to prove that they are apex predators to themselves, to us. That's what it feels like to me, at least. And the screech howl that this thing made reminded me, the description of it reminded me of the experience that I had in 1994. And I shared it in the live stream the other night. And I had said that my friend who was in the car, so the road is here in front of me, in front of us. The woods are right there in front of us that we are looking at, and we can look this way and see these things coming through the woods. We could see just the eye shine. But as my friend was in his front seat adjusting the radio, he had said he had seen two of these other creatures crossing the road. Now, if he had not seen those two creatures, we would not probably be here today. Because when the others howled and shrieked like that, the girls immediately got in the car. My friend Gabe did not shut his door right away. He only shut his door when I had jumped in the car last, only because I was in shock, wondering what in the heck am I looking at? What is making this noise? And I think they do that as almost like an adrenaline rush, like we get when we do something, as humans get. You know, they just to see us freak out, to see us in fear. And I can't help but think about the description of inorganic beings and how they feed off of our fear. They live in an alternate dimension and manipulate things around us to cause fear, and then they feed on that fear and other emotions. I don't know, just something I thought of when I was narrating that, and it really resonated with me, and I just wanted to share it with you guys. So let's get into the next encounter. Today's second encounter is from the same location the first one was. I was sitting in the woods on a tree trunk on my property in Cadillac, Michigan. It was roughly 9 a.m. The date was September of 2014. I had heard a twig snap and looked behind me. I saw this creature. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. My heart started to pound and I started to sweat immediately when I saw it. The creature was orange like common fox are up here. It easily stood 7 feet in height. Its eyes were the color of gold. The creature had human hands, but covered in orange fur, and had claws. Also, it seemed to have hooves on its legs that I could hear when it ran. I had only a few seconds to see it before it ran away, hearing the distance of its hooves hitting the ground and fading away. The same day, I tried to get my neighbor's hunting cams, but they said there was no video card in it, but I hoped someone else had seen this creature or hears of my experience and can share a little more on whatever this thing was. So, hooves, canine face and hooves. Could it have been maybe he heard what sounded like hooves and were its claws making that clicking noise? I'm not sure. I've heard of a lot of different descriptions of dogmen. And, obviously the bodybuilder Dogman from the Underworld series, what I saw, very strange, very Anubis-like, very tall, athletically built, but not like it was on roids and worked out at Gold's Gym. I've heard of dogmen with wings, or a creature that resembled a dogman and that had wings. And it did, the way they described it was identical to a dogman, minus the wings, or with the wings included. And then this, and I have heard of different other experiences with dogmen with hooves, so I'm not quite sure what these things are, demonic or from another dimension, portal travel. Just because something is what it is here doesn't mean necessarily that it's going to be what it is in that portal dimension, I don't think they are mirrored images of each other. I think there are similarities, but I think there is definitely a difference and maybe that's where those flying dogmen come from too. And maybe that's where they all come from. I don't know, but it just seems weird that there are multiple descriptions of these creatures, but they all have that similarity, that canine-like face. They do stand bipedal and are athletically built or jacked. So, and even being jacked, you could call athletically built. And with that, let's jump into the most talked about Michigan Dogman video ever. This is the full video. I believe I've heard there are bits and pieces that there is a longer version. I've never seen it with my own eyes. I've only heard that it exists, and I have looked everywhere for the longer version. I've seen even shorter versions that people have claimed that it was the longer version, like 1 minute long, but this one's 3. So I'm not sure. All I know is that it's the longest version of this video that I've ever seen. And I want to share it with you and see what you guys think, because this is the Michigan Dogman video that helped make the Dogman of Michigan what it is today, along with that song as well. All right, so that is the famous Michigan Dogman video. Not much is known about it. I guess it was found in a box at this person's home, and it was shared. Like I said, supposedly there is a longer version of it, but I have never seen it. I've only heard that. I've never known anyone who has seen the longer version. And I've talked to literally thousands of people because of this channel. I only heard about it via like the internet, Reddit or something. So it might be someone talking out of their ass. I'm not sure. I will continue to look for the longer version because I'd like to see it if it is existing. Really quick, I just wanted to touch base on something. I am going to be doing an upload in the next day or two in regards to a very strange animal attack that happened in Saskatchewan, Canada, and I think it's called Points North. And the gentleman that reached out to me said that within 1 year's period of time, 2 people were savagely torn apart, and that they blamed a lone wolf, for both attacks. And he said that is not what happened. And he's going to fill me in on the details of that experience, or those experiences, and I'm going to share them with you. I got one last experience that is just truly amazing, but I'd like to quickly say something. I said I had read 2 different comments that popped into my head, and the last one that I had read was someone had made mention about. There was a comment that said, I'm new to the channel, but this one researcher had made a statement that the majority of people who have experiences are of Germanic descent. And I kind of giggled to myself because, one, I'm not a fan of the researcher. Not because of anything other than I think they are pompous. But I said to myself, that makes a lot of sense. And that statement could be used in the majority of comparisons, because 17% of the population identifies as having German heritage in their blood. And so I quickly looked it up because I had already known this, because my family, my dad did an Ancestry.com thing, and I had read it reading through our stuff. And 17%, according to the 2020 U.S. Census, 17% of Americans have German ancestry, making it the largest ethnic group in the country. So even though 17% doesn't sound very large, 50.7 million Americans identify as having German descent, and it's been proven that they do. So with that being in fact, is that researcher an expert because he made that comment? Because it was just funny how this person put this person on that pedestal. And I don't think there are experts in this field at all. I think we are all on an equal playing field when it comes to our theories and research. There's no one better than anybody in cryptozoology, in paranormal research, in any of this. There are people that have access to doing different things, going to different places and such, but no one's an expert. And with that statement, 17% of the population, so, and it is the largest, well, that would make sense that the majority of the people who have had experiences with cryptids, with the paranormal, with high strangeness, would be of Germanic descent, if it is the largest ethnic group, in fact. So I could make a statement stating that the majority of people who buy Mountain Dew are of German descent. And it would be true. So I think that what needs to happen is we really need to stop taking, because a person has so many views or so many subscribers or this or that, that doesn't make them an expert. That makes them compelling. That makes them interesting. Not an expert. Just because someone can say, is a good storyteller and can captivate the audience doesn't make them an expert. I am a shitty storyteller. I'm not an expert. I can research, but I'm not an expert in that either. But it's something that I love, just like all of you. I just think we need to knock down these pedestals, because we all are on an equal playing field when it comes to our theories, ideas, puzzle pieces, and such. Just wanted to share that, get it off my chest. Let's jump into the last encounter of the day. Subscriber sent me this on Saturday evening. You can't go through Mississippi without experiencing the Mississippi River, blues music, catfish, gators, and Southern hospitality. Besides the warm, welcoming culture, it sits upon marshy lands and thick pine forests and the Gulf Coast. My name is Shane. This is where I was born, raised, and still live to this very day, and this is my experience. A little background on myself. I am an avid hog hunter and trapper. For those of you who do not live in the South, we have a problem down here of invasive pigs or feral hog. These pigs are big, mean, carry diseases, breed quickly, and can be difficult to trap. They cause millions of dollars in property damage. They destroy yards, farmland, ruin ecosystems. I have been affected firsthand by these critters and have made it my priority to help reduce these pests and the devastation they like to cause. Anyway, I own some property up outside of a small town called Purvis. And there on my land is where I do most of my hunting and trapping. When I trap, I like to use a large coral traps because from experience, they work the best. The one I own is very large, remote activated, one right which sits next to a camera. I first bait the trap with corn, then wait. When the camera picks up movement, it alerts my phone to where I can see if it is a hog in my trap, where then I can push a button and the walls come down and trap them inside. For those who want to do the same, I have a boar buster, and it works like a charm. My personal best is 19 in one catch, so if you beat it, consider yourself a champ. Anyway, I will tell you about this trap because of my first experience with the Dogman. It was about 1 year ago in July, and in the summer down south it is hot and humid with temperatures reaching well into the 90s and higher, depending on the humidity. That day was hotter than the sun of a gun. I was at my property, and it was starting to get dark, and I was in the middle of eating supper when my phone lit up with a notification that alerted me that my trap had some activity. I quickly got up and checked it to see 13 hog eating the corn I had set, 2 sow both with 5, and 1 juvenile. I waited patiently as they all slowly got in the middle, then I hit the button as the walls slammed down in the dirt, trapping them inside. I remember saying, "Gotcha, mad sacks." As I was grinning from ear to ear, I set my phone down and went to get my .22 rifle and laid it on the table and cleaned up supper, get ready for bed. I was going to take care of these pigs in the morning. As I was getting ready for bed, I remember putting my phone charge on my nightstand and went and hopped out of bed to grab my phone. It alerted me that there was more activity at the trap. Being curious, I checked to see if there were more hog I could potentially spot and stalk the next morning. And what I saw on that camera was straight from a horror movie. I noticed and heard the hog were going absolutely insane. Then, one of the cameras, I saw a large, hairy creature on all fours creep up to the trap from the darkness. At first I thought, what the hell is a bear doing here? There are black bear in Mississippi, although you don't see them as much where I live. They are here, though. Then I looked at it more closely and realized it was wrong in shape and thought that it was a large, dark coyote because coyote are everywhere here. Rare, I thought, but then again I realized its size compared to the trap. I then thought of R.L. Stine's Goosebumps book, Werewolf of Fever Swamp, and thought that it looks like how it was described in the book, from what I remember as a boy. My eyes started to get wider with a realization, and a wave of fear and concern began to creep into my mind. I was watching this live as this very large black wolf was circling my trap. I noticed its head and how it looked like a coyote head, but much larger. I then noticed how built this coyote Dogman creature was, and noticed that it had some serious muscle mass to it. Then I noticed its hands and feet, and I say that because it had human-like hands with these claws that looked like knives protruding from its fingers, and its legs were just like that of a dog with a backwards joint. At this point, the hog were constantly too far from the cage. The exact opposite is this Dogman creature. Then, if things could not get more bone-chilling, the frightening this creature stood on its two legs and hopped into the trap like it was nothing. Keep in mind, this trap is 5 feet tall, and it is almost double the height of my trap when it stood up and jumped in it like it was nothing. What happened next, I'm going to keep it brief, but I watched for a couple of seconds. It happened, but unfortunately, I did not turn off the audio, and what I saw and heard was absolutely the worst thing I'd ever seen and heard. It was a slaughter. My soul winced and squirmed with every shriek and cry from these hogs in that pen. Then it all went silent. My hands and body were shaking, and I had a primal fear watch over me. My body and blood went cold, and I was in utter shock, disbelief at what I had just seen. I wanted to look away, but my eyes were glued to the screen. I watched as this creature put what was left of a sow on its shoulder, the other sow in its jaw, and a juvenile in its claw, as it again hopped the cage like it was nothing, disappearing into the forest. I couldn't speak. The words would not come out. I was completely frozen solid. I didn't want to move. I couldn't move. My eyes were locked onto my phone screen, frantically looking and anticipating something else to happen. I generally feared that if I moved, it would come for me. I stared at that trap for 30 damn minutes, waiting, watching, listening for anything to come back. Luckily, that Dogman thing did not come back that night. And I got no sleep that night. I didn't bother trying. I made sure I locked every door and window, got out my SIG P229, and sat on the couch with it by my side until morning. When the sun finally rose, I waited till it was bright and sunny and loaded up my Polaris and drove out a couple of minutes to the trap. I left my .22 and brought my AR-15 and had the safety off the entire way. When I arrived at the trap, I slowly got off my Polaris with my AR raised, finger on the trigger, slowly walking up to the trap, scanning my surroundings. Straining my ears, holding my breath, every step was planned and carefully placed as if my life depended on it, which it definitely did. I finally got to the trap and my stomach clenched as I saw the red scene lay out in front of me. There was nothing intact in that trap. You can probably imagine what I saw, but to help picture everything with a bucket of dark red paint on everything, I thought to myself, whatever this thing is, it is a killing machine. I very quickly and most quietly raised the trap walls to allow for other animals to clean up the mess. As soon as I finished, I had an awful feeling of dread come over me, and my hair on my body began to stand straight up. I quickly decided to leave that area as quickly as possible and return home. Hopped onto the Polaris and sped home. After that day, nothing else happened for a while, and the uneasiness began to disappear until the end of August came around. The weather began to cool just a bit, and one day I went out to the feeder I have set up and put the trail cam and spot some deer and see what bucks I could potentially go for the upcoming deer season. I arrived at the feeder and loaded the feeder with some corn and climbed into a nearby tree stand and waited for the feeder to go off. About 30 minutes later, the feeder went off, and not too shortly, a group of 5 hog came wandering in, grunting and uprooting stuff and being noisy as they began to feed. I was annoyed because I left my .22 in the Polaris just below the tree, and I knew if I got down, I would scare off the hog, but then I realized I had my SIG P229 and decided, I guess, that I would have to do the job for the day. I slowly and quietly brought it out of my holster, flicked the safety off, and aimed. As soon as I was about to pull the trigger at the biggest hog of the group, a large black hairy mass sprung from the forest. It was so fast, so unexpected, I flinched so hard and almost dropped my gun on my stand. It was a blur that happened within a matter of seconds. The black blur ran out of the woods, grabbed a pig, and knocked over my feeder in all of a matter of, no joke, 3 seconds. I was in such shock and disbelief that my mind was a blank. There was no thought, no anything. What the hell just happened, I thought. I was then hit by the sudden realization that it was that Dogman thing I saw, and it had run right out in front of me. That same primal fear came rushing back into my mind as I sat motionless in a tree for about an hour. I dared not make a sound or even breathe if not necessary. I was so scared even blinking seemed loud in my primal fear. All that time my mind was spinning with questions like, how did I not see it? Did it see me? Did it know I was there? Could it have got me if it wanted to? If I had to, could I protect myself? Is it still there? Etc. And running through different scenarios that could have played out in my brain. After I felt the coast was clear and I felt safe enough to get off the tree, I climbed down that tree like a monkey and sped home, did not stop till I got to my house. After that day, it was hard to go back outside without that paranoia, knowing that it was still out there, and there is no gun I have in my possession that could take it out if I wanted to. It's been over a year now, and I haven't seen it since. I'm still trapping and hunting on that very land, but now I always keep in mind that Dogman is out there, and that the feral hog, and now I have something that we always have to watch our backs for. I remember, about 2 years ago now. Time does fly. This was around 2022. I had been talking to a gentleman from Texas, and we were talking about feral hog. And he had mentioned this to me, and I kind of played with it in my head for a little bit, and I was like, yeah, that might possibly be the answer. But we were talking about how the population had gotten so out of hand, and that quite possibly these feral hog had been used by the government as food for the dogmen that the government had chipped and released. And I thought to myself, that's actually a really good idea, because with all of the hunters in hunting season hunting deer, that population would go really down if these dogmen were just, hunting deer. Maybe the government introduced these feral hog to the mix. The dogmen liked the fatty content, the meat, whatever. Everyone loves bacon. But no, for real, that these things were used as food by the government for dogmen. Or the government is using dogmen to hunt feral hog down, because pest control agencies where there are feral hog can only do so much, right? So why not send out the apex predator? Anyway, just a theory. Looking forward to talking to that gentleman from Points North Landing. And I looked into it a little bit, and I could read in the news what he was talking about, and I was like, holy cow, this is going to be interesting. And he said that, it is something that really needs to be looked into, because what did this is still up there to this day. And I mean, that's terrifying in and of itself. 2 people dead within a year's time. And then how many other countless people have died without it being brought up into the news, Who knows? Anyway, I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that keeps this channel growing and going, and what gives us all a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. That is because of you guys, so thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, the most precious gift we could be given. Our pets, the greatest alarm system given. Friends and family, the people that mean the most to us. Share this information with those folks that you love and care about. It may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop searching for the truth and asking the right questions, because, hopefully we get those answers. Anyway, God bless.